Hello, everyone. Welcome to today's webinar on supply chain capacity management, what you need to prepare your organization and prevent supply chain disruptions. I am Gabrielle, your host and moderator for today. Going on to the next slide. Today's speakers, we have Renat Rose, VP of Operations, and Sandeep Ramachandran, Senior Manager of Supply Chain Solution Design here at Resilinc to speak today. Before getting started with the webinar, let's go over the housekeeping rules and agenda. Some housekeeping rules. These presentation slides will be sent after the meeting. Please type your questions as they come up in the chat panel located in the right-hand side, and we'll have time for Q&A at the end. If we don't answer all of your questions today, don't worry, we'll reach out and answer by the end of the day. Don't forget to download our annual Event Watch report at resilinc.com/Event Watch report. If you have any further questions from today's presentation, please reach out to Sandeep directly at sandeep.ramachandran@resilinc.com. Now I'll hand it over to Sandeep Ramachandran, Senior Manager of Supply Chain Solution Design.
Thank you, Gabby, and very welcome. Good morning, good afternoon to everyone. Very excited to talk to you about this topic, a very important topic today, and that's happening each day, every moment, very relevant topic to discuss. So from the agenda standpoint, what we're going to do today is start off with understanding the prevalence of this problem, the capacity management and the issues. We'll then slowly move towards an approach, and a proactive data-driven approach, and then move towards how Resilinc's data solution expertise can help you and help your organization to be the leaders in the space, and then we'll try to round it off with any questions at the end of the session here. So every supply chain practitioner, I'm sure, has a story to tell on this topic of supplier capacity. And so for the practitioner experts on this call, I'm sure that you can commiserate together that we have all gone through these issues in the past, and even today, or even in the future, that we can expect. So what we'll cover in this section is how this problem is ongoing, how is it getting worse each day, and why is it happening and making our lives miserable at times, and how can we deal with the problem here. The facts first. All manufacturers have capacity constraints, and these constraints could be based on the different factories' outputs that is limited by the equipment or manufacturing floor capacity. It could be due to the availability of skilled or unskilled workers. It could be due to the governmental or political regulation actions. It could be due to the disruption, which affects one of the raw materials, which is critical to the products out there. And of course, the very common one, which is these constraints could happen all of a sudden when there's a demand spike, which is completely unexpected, and you get caught off guard as a result of it. And perhaps if you take a funny example here, imagine the Kardashians tweet about a product, and suddenly everyone wants to use it, right? And that's a very, very high-class problem to have. But unfortunately, the challenge is if your supply chain does not have that flexibility to meet the demand, to meet the upside, then that's the issue that we are looking at, and you cannot take these advantages of these upswings that we are experiencing here. So it takes years and hundreds of millions of dollars to build a factory, and after building your factory, then you need to get your equipment installed, you need to test it, you need to qualify it, and then more importantly, you need to produce all these products and parts after finding the right skills and experts to run the whole overall program, right? And companies are not going to make this investment unless or until you take an action, and they're not there to just sit around and waste all these investments that they have made, which means that you cannot just have an alternate site sitting around and not serving the purpose that it's meant for. And our data shows that overall, it's a very, very small percentage of companies that reported that they don't have these alternate sites, or they have these alternate sites which would support the primary manufacturing sites which manufacture these products. Obviously, not having enough alternate sites is a huge problem, because how many of us can meet the overall revenue and customer expectation if we are on a location for months at a time? We're not being ahead of the game in this scenario here. So in 2018, Resilinc covered around 2,700 plus events worldwide. These are impactful events. And we found that only 12% of the suppliers who were in the region of impact had an alternate site. Just to repeat, only 12% of suppliers who were in this region of impact had an alternate site. In today's world, which is highly lean and just-in-time manufacturing, even a very small blip can actually magnify the whole impact, and it could be a big impact to your overall supply chain. So now looking at the facts here again, clearly Resilinc, as I mentioned, we found out around 2,700 news events last year, and they have the potential to impact supply chain. That's the important piece here. And the macroeconomic indicators reflect definitely the same story. For example, the Institute of Supply Managers Supply Delivery Index actually shows that there's a delay in the suppliers' backlogs and supply deliveries for the straight 36 months that we are looking at. And at the same time, what we also saw was ISM's index shows that this demand has been strong. It's been ever growing. But what's the hard part? The hard part is the demand is growing, but the capacity is not being at the best. The supply is not being met at the best. So what is happening is that these demands, which is highly increasing, gets unfulfilled. And this is actually a problem, right? So CEOs and investors who are keenly looking at the company's progress here, they want their companies to achieve their full growth and revenue potential. And if they're not able to meet the demand, then that's an issue that we are clearly looking at. Therefore, if we manage the supply and supplier capacity actively, I'm sure we'll be able to realize the different revenue growth opportunities. And it's a really good, compelling option to invest in these capabilities if there's a definite return on investment for these things that we are talking about. So one thing to note here is this problem is not going to go away anytime soon, right? It's there, it's always there. So the best thing to do is manage it. With everything that we see around us, the current demographic trends, the geopolitical protectionism, we see that these supply chains will be in the news, and capacity and these disruptions will always be a continuous problem in the months and years to come. So we need to manage it effectively. But we always look for a good news here, right? The good news is there is job security for experts like us. Who doesn't like that, right? But what about the bad news? The bad news is that there's never a dull moment. So there will be the next shortage, the next allocation, the next emergency, which is all around the corner, and you're always on your toes. This means that we need to make sure we are not doing the same old mistake in how we operate in this paradigm. We should always, I think, look at what positions as well from a competitive standpoint, having that control and predictability in place. I think this is what helps us to always have that competitive advantage when we are faced with these kind of disruption. And more importantly, I think let's not scramble and do extraordinary things when the results are just ordinary. So you can take adequate measures which are simple, which will definitely help you to stay ahead of the game and be the leaders in the market. To really drive this point home, let me give you a little more food for thought here. At times you might think you're in line to compete for capacity with your suppliers, but is that the reality? You think so, right? Now, you could be an automotive company, you could be a shoe manufacturer who's trying to compete with Apple, for instance, for chip capacity. Guess what? All the products that we use these days have semiconductors associated with it. So what's happening here is more and more of you will find yourself waiting in line, and the line that's behind Apple, which is one of the giants in the space, a company which has made locking up supplier capacity for years to come and almost made actually an art form out of the capacity and all these constraints and grabbing the market in this example as you see here. I feel that the only way that you can protect your supply chain is to be better informed, better prepared, and be ahead in line, because these big players, they hit the suppliers really hard asking for capacity or inventory during all these constrained times. And it is at this time when the suppliers would think about, hey, should I meet the demand of my priority customers, the big players here, or should I be meeting the demand of the other customers of mine? And it's all about being ahead of the game and being in the forefront of the line that we are talking about. I also want to talk a little bit about turning the table here a little bit. And if you play this card that I'm talking about, you can actually use this as a leverage against your competitors, and you can use the supply chain as a competitive weapon against them. As we always tell, turning this risk into opportunity, and that's an important thing for mitigating any kind of supply chain risks out there. So in Apple's 2011 capacity move on touchscreen glass displays, I'm sure you have heard about it, it actually kept out all the major competitors out of the tablet market for almost 3 years. So it's 3 years that they were just on the forefront and taking complete capacity from all the people out there. And this was a 4 billion capacity option, which allowed iPad to dominate the tablet market. Perhaps people who remember this, you might now be able to turn back and think about it. When you went to a Best Buy or when you went to order a tablet, you would have seen only iPads on the shelves rather than any of the other competitions out there. Well, when you look at the last 3 years, or in the 3 years that they were the leaders in holding the capacity, Apple actually sold around $110 billion for iPad revenue. And this does not even include the digital content sales and the years of the captive install base, which has actually allowed them to become the most valuable company on this planet. So it's all about having that information on hand, being able to leverage these data points, understanding and working with your suppliers, which is very important, which could give you that competitive edge out there. So let's face the fact, let's talk about this today. We are extremely reactive in the way that we manage the supply chain risk. And we typically find out how supplier issues happen, right? It's only after we place the order and the supplier decommits that we understand, oh, there's a supplier issue now. And once it's in the lead time window, it's actually really difficult. It's absolutely too late to resolve a capacity problem because it's already on the works, and it's going to be difficult for the supplier, and they're going to push back for sure. And the only real strategy to stay in control is identifying the potential problem ahead of time and working with your suppliers jointly to find the best way that would ultimately protect yourself. So now that we have just set up, this is again the problem statement, the problems that we are facing here. So with that said, let me invite Rana to share her thoughts on the next slide.
Thank you, Sandeep. A great introduction. So what's required to address the problem? In this section, we'll talk about how best-in-class companies take a data-driven approach to get in front of this problem and give themselves months of early warning before things get bad. Next slide. Thank you. The key here is information. It's like driving without a map, a traffic report, or road conditions. You're going to react to each pothole as it comes. You may take a few wrong turns. You may even experience some, traffic delays, and it will impact your arrival time. But if you're proactive and you use an app or a tool such as Waze or any other app that gives you real-time traffic and real-time rerouting information, then you're likely to beat everyone else. We navigate our supply chain in this very reactive way today. Our information systems are outdated, we operate in a haze, and we don't really know who's currently disrupted when our orders get placed. In short, we lack the proper information and tools to really orchestrate our supply chain performance for the best results. In the following slides, we'll discuss each of these points in detail with some examples and screenshots of our solutions to show you all how our customers do this. Thank you. In sourcing, we often take a spend-based approach to managing suppliers. But the first mind shift we encourage you to make is to really take a revenue or product or even like a customer-based approach to this problem. because after all, what you need is every single supplier and part to be there to ship the product. You just managing the high span parts is not going to cut it. We all know a kit cannot be dropped until that last label is on the floor. So making sure that everything is in line and is on the floor is what's important. Knowing the critical products and associated high revenue impacted parts and suppliers gives you a framework to really hone in on the problem. But also it makes this manageable. And that's the whole idea, making it manageable and giving you a place to start attacking the problem. If someone told you to fix this for 40,000 parts, out of which say, 20,000 are single source, this is a daunting problem. How am I going to tackle this? But if you take your top 5 revenue products and set a goal to achieve consistent supplier performance and supplier capacity assurance for those 5 products, it will become completely manageable because now you're taking chunks and attacking it with a strategic view. Each company will have its own definition of what is critical. If you're in healthcare, for example, patient life may be your criteria, and so on. Next slide, thank you. Now for the narrowed down list of suppliers, products, parts, map the supply chain and understand the supplier's global manufacturing footprint. Map the parts to the sites that make, that store, and that distribute them. And finally, know who are the critical sub-tier suppliers for these companies. Extremely important. Mapping is a huge asset to your organization. And it's a gift that keeps on really giving. You'll use your supply chain mapping data not only for capacity risk management, but for all kinds of supply chain problems, looking at revenue impact, everything. Just think of the recent tariff analytics that I'm sure all of you have had to go through. If you had your suppliers, your sub-tiers mapped, you could have easily found out, very easily, how you were impacted. This provides a key framework for all of your future supplier management initiatives, whether it's crisis management, supplier performance management, cost reductions, capacity management, compliance, corporate social responsibility, or any other strategic supply chain initiative. Mapping will prove to be the foundation that powers confident, precise, and informed decisions. In addition to mapping the supply chain, we suggest surveying your key suppliers about their capacity. And this we need to make sure, because most often suppliers treat questions about capacity with some healthy skepticism. And some will outright refuse to share this information because they may perceive it will give you an advantage in negotiation. Of course, this is because suppliers have seen this type of behavior from their customers before. And this is the mindset that we need to change. This is where trust and healthy supplier relationships are critical. Companies who treat suppliers as valued and trusted long-term partners will find that your suppliers will share capacity information with you willingly. And this will be transformational in how much control you're able to exert over your supply chain performance. You will say that you have to persist, not give up, build trust over time, and continuously emphasize to your suppliers why are you asking for this information and how you plan to use it. This has to be reiterated, not just once and forgotten, but it is a continuous education. We know your contacts change, departments get reorganized, so don't just do it once and move on. Make sure you emphasize the need for this information is for ensuring supply continuity, and you have to be very clear about that. Always remember that continuous supply for you is ongoing revenue for the supplier. Therefore, this is one area where your interests are completely aligned. If you make transparency a key metric for a supplier to achieve preferred supplier status or to be considered for a new product being designed, then you'll have a much higher success at getting suppliers to be transparent. And that's where the earlier mention of the scorecard is so important. You know, make this part of your whole supply chain initiative. A robust capacity survey can cover availability of alternate sites, strategic buffers, upside flexibility timeframe, and the shifts. You know, how many shifts are there at the supplier? Capacity utilization and inventory can vary, and we know that changes, especially inventory. As Sandeep mentioned earlier with JIT and so forth, that's a daily change. So therefore, this information may need more frequent refreshes. And we do not recommend putting all of your suppliers through this exercise. You know, the best candidates are suppliers who, for example, supply high volume raw material or parts. Suppliers that go into parts that go into products that have fluctuating demand, or where you might be expecting sudden upswings and certainty, and suppliers who have a consistent track record of inconsistent delivery performance. That's where we recommend you put your emphasis on, and that's where you should start. The next information, you know, that's really important is the 24/7 monitoring of your supply chain. As we looked at in the previous slides, you will not have all of the data about all of your suppliers, right? Therefore, you will need continuous and ongoing monitoring of 100% of your suppliers to make up the information gap. Monitoring is the one most critical capability that is in today's uncertain times. You know, you should not find yourself without under any circumstance. It's something that you need to make sure that is a priority for you, your company, and for your supply chain as well. Here you can see an example of how an event that caused a supply chain constraint in the months ahead. If you know these dependencies through mapping and monitoring programs, you will have months on your competition to react and respond to these developments. You know, let's see this in action in another very recent example that is playing out in the health care industry as we speak. This is happening live right now. This is about Strigenix. It's a company that provides sterilization services that are critical for medical, pharmaceutical, food, product, safety, you know, all the packaged material and laboratory testing. Pretty much anything, you know, that either goes into our body or we consume it or is on our bodies. As a key service provider that is used by many companies to sterilize their products. They are a critical but often ignored part of the supply chain by the end customer. Many companies may not even realize that some medical devices or products they buy are sterilized at a Strigenix facility. They just know the product and they know who to buy it. But who are the subcontractors to your suppliers, correct? So in September, you know, so what happened is in September, Strigenix factory near Chicago, you know, was put on the EPA's radar because complaints raised by the residents of the local Wilbur community. Resilinc actually notified customers right then. As soon as they went on the EPA's radar, we notified. And then within a few days, Strigenix faced lawsuits over their use of ethylene oxide, a material that is used to sterilize almost 50%. I mean, 50% of all medical devices used nationwide have ethylene oxide as a sterilization. So what we did is we upped the level of impact in the end of September as we were monitoring the story on behalf of our customers. Our guidance went from a low impact to medium impact. So for our customers who were receiving this alert and subsequent updates, they had up to 5 months warning before the EPA shut down the facility in Illinois in February. So for many companies, the first concrete EPA action was the first indicator. However, this information did not really trickle down to end customers, the hospitals. So they were not aware of what was going on until March, until this month. So today, many healthcare providers are scrambling to real impending shortages of medical devices, which cannot be sterilized. And capacity is constrained now that an entire facility is taken down. Some medical devices affected by this will affect patient lives and treatment, and of course, certainly cost, and cost will go up because of this. And I've always said this before, PPV is not a solution. It's something that we need to avoid. And being proactive is a good way of doing that. As you can see, not all companies or providers will be equally affected. Many healthcare providers are Resilinc's customers, and they have been notified about this event since September. So if you're unfortunate enough to be associated with someone who is only now catching on, then you're 5 months behind, and you will find yourself reacting last minute and trying to perform heroics in the next few months to scramble to get what you need. And then on the health, on the high tech side, we always know who our suppliers are and who we're buying our chips and ASICs and all this from. But do you know who they're sending it to get programmed? We've been in situations where you can't get a product because the programming house has not, does not have your latest program, or they are capacity constrained because somebody else has given them a real large order. So knowing who all of these players are and having them mapped is extremely critical. As you can see, information is the variable. Timely, reliable, well-researched information in the hands of the right people who are trained to use it well and empowered to act can be a very powerful thing. Here's how our customers treat the news and events we monitor for them. Not only do we notify them about impending problems, we also help them tie events to their supply chain and quantify exactly which of their suppliers, parts, products will be impacted. Resilinc holds the patent for also quantifying revenue impact. That's another way where we are also helping our customers. This information can help practitioners really make an assessment of what they need to do. Your experts can take our analysis and put their knowledge of the suppliers and apply your time, resources, and budget constraints to decide if there's a significant concern, a business justification, to take an action now. And of course, we know not every, this will help you decide because not every event requires mitigation. So what information of this nature what can this do for you is give you enough data points so you can decide whether to act or to wait and see, and let's see how it develops, and use those resources in a much more productive way rather than chasing something that really, it's a 500,000 or 100,000 revenue per year, and it really should not have been wasting all that time on it. Some scenarios do warrant immediate or proactive action, whether it's because you have received an early warning about a potential capacity problem or constraint, or whether it's because you're proactively sensing a supplier vulnerability from your mapping, surveying effort. Quantifying impact will allow you to create the business justification for a proactive mitigation. If you were to go to your leadership team and say, I don't know, I need 500,000 in NREs to develop an alternate supplier and put up more inventory, they're most likely to balk at you. However, if you go and put a strategic plan in place and say, I'm concerned about XYZ supplier due to their developing situation, and we have, I don't know, $4 billion revenue exposure that, this, and if this goes bad, you are most likely to get them to support your recommendation. And you can go with a more strategic plan with the data and the mapping that you have to do to have that information at your fingertips. And as a supply chain expert, we recommend making sure various mitigation approaches have a playbook so that globally dispersed teams can still act in sync with each other, rather than duplicating efforts and wasting precious time trying to solve the same problem. Where you're one company, it shouldn't be done 15 different ways for the same thing. The one thing that we cannot emphasize enough of is to make sure your supplier is part of the solution, and work together with them to find the solution. At Resilinc, we don't call suppliers, we call them partners. So as our customers, they're your partners, and you need to treat them as such, rather than just a supplier. We see this often in the life science and high tech and automotive industries. Your supplier partners are often single source due to the IP, joint development, or regulatory approval process. This means their fortunes are entwined and relationships are stronger and more collaborative. There are some industries where customers switch sources easily and quickly, and we find relationships to be more commoditized and superficial. But what we've seen in our customer base is that it is very intertwined. You need to create transparency and trust as key criteria for your trusted partner program, and ensure you reward your supplier partners who are transparent by giving them more business. And we caution against using mapping and capacity survey data as leverage in pricing negotiations. As we know, this is a sure way for your supplier partner to refuse to participate and cooperate in the future. That is the most worst thing you can do. So Sandeep, I'll hand it over to you from here.
Yeah, thanks, Rana. I think this is really amazing the way that companies, best-in-class companies, structure the way that they, understand the problem, set a process in front of them, and more importantly, come out in flying colors by having a well-rounded approach towards any issue that's on hand. And I'm sure some of you are worried about, looking back and thinking about it as this is a lot of work. This is a daunting task. But the answer here is you don't have to worry about it because you don't have to reinvent the wheel again and again. So there's an entire solution space that we are focusing, which exactly solves this problem. And Resilinc is actually the leader in bringing this solution to the market is the leader in bringing the solution to the market, where we help you in completely mapping your supply chain to monitoring, to assessments, to scorecarding, to mitigation. It's a complete one-stop destination solution that is available. And just to give you a little bit context about Resilinc here, for folks who do not know about what we do, Resilinc was founded in 2010 as the LinkedIn for supply chain. We have already onboarded more than 80,000 suppliers on our platform. And these suppliers that we have onboarded have mapped more than 3 million parts to more than 250,000 sites that we are constantly monitoring, as we have been mentioning. And for the suppliers, it is as easy as it can get, because suppliers can share this data with any customer simply by approving them, approving and saying that, hey, this is my new customer, I would like to access the data. It's just very similar to the LinkedIn, where you can connect with people and it keeps going and going. And at the end of the day, you are building a big network and getting that transparency out of the program. And long story short, you don't have to wait for 3 years to get your overall supply chain mapping. Rather, you're just able to hit the ground running as we start the program. We talked about the approach, as Rana was mentioning, from planning to mapping, monitoring, and assessing to mitigating. As you can see, the Resilinc's full solution suite addresses all the key best practices that we just discussed, and we already have a built-in a robust solution for analyzing the supplier metrics, right from providing that Resilinc intelligence and research, Resilinc advisory to plan your programs, to map, which is your multi-tier mapping, right from your tier 1, tier 2 to N tiers, mapping it all the way to your material level, then monitoring it 24/7, constantly understanding what are the events happening, to simulating the events in the system so that you're more proactive in the approach of risk management, to assessing, so the capacity assessment, the prescriptive analytics that are associated with it, all the way up to the mitigation, which is what the solution provides you built in. Yeah, this is a quick overview of the product and the core competencies that we have. So you can see, you can use the library of supplier assessment. So Resilinc has this supplier library assessments where we have several different assessments, stock assessments, which are already created by experts, which you can leverage as is, and you can get your program running as soon as possible. And this comes up with different kinds of dashboards that help you to highlight these suppliers in the case of supplier risk. In the case of capacity assessment, you can easily understand or highlight which are the suppliers which are more constrained, what are the key risks in the supply chain, and based on the mapping that you have done and so forth. The event watch solution, which we talked about a little bit, so this is the 24/7 event monitoring solution, which brings the power of artificial intelligence to find and review all the different data that you see around this world. So as you open the news, you can see there are hundreds, millions of news items that get pushed in every minute, every second. So we constantly monitor, and we go through 55 different languages to understand these impacts to your company, your industry, and then we notify you through the event watch solution. The Risk Shield, as you see here, is a solution which provides you a well-rounded revenue impact as well as supplier risk score analytics, which ultimately helps you to prioritize your risk and then push it towards mitigation. And as Rana mentioned, the patented methodology of risk calculation, the way that we represent the risk for each supplier at a site level, at a material level, commodity level, product level, any level that you can think about, we provide that information so that you can just take it and then do valuable assessments to reduce the overall risk here. The good part of the capacity, or the good part of the survey library, as we mentioned, is you have these stock survey available, which has been created in collaboration with the industry leaders as well as the expertise that we have. But at the same time, the powerful aspect of it is you can also bring your question, you can bring your assessment in here, and we can actually load it up in our system, and you could launch. We can launch the assessment for you, collect the supplier responses without you having to spend time, resources, effort, and we provide that intelligence of gathering the data, consolidating the responses, and generating the KPIs and the metrics, which is what executives look at the end of the day. Have initiated a program, what are the metrics? So the main focus that you would have to do would be to just launch the assessment and then look at the results that is generated through these efforts. So in one place now, you're able to track all your supplier metrics. So if you look at the different risk factors, each company might have different risk factors that you are taking into consideration. So you can bring all those risk factors into one place. For instance, the capacity risk score, if there are other factors such as financial health, location, sourcing risk, recovery risk, operational scores, such as your cost, your quality, or on-time delivery, you can bring all these different risk factors into one system, one tool, which is Resilinc, and then everything can be visualized, and more importantly, your suppliers and your experts don't have to invest a lot of time in collecting data from n number of systems out there. They could just pull up a scorecard, for instance, when they're in a QBR with a supplier, pull up a scorecard, walk through some of the key achievements, walk through some of the gaps that you've identified, and then work on things that actually mean a lot, which is reducing the risk. So it's as easy as it can get here. So this is a view of the supplier capacity assessment dashboard. So once the assessment is launched, we start to, again, as I mentioned, we help you in collecting that information so that you don't have to, spend your resources and effort. Rather, we help you in collecting and, educating the supplier, the overall goal, and helping them to fill the assessment. And once we get these results back, you can, start seeing these different metrics. And the dashboard that you see here is an example of one of the really cool dashboards that give insights to customers that we work with on this page. As an example, if you look at here, you can see that the dashboards help you to identify suppliers who will take months to meet the demand upside, for instance, or the ones which do not have an alternate side at all, or which are the suppliers who have maxed out their capacity completely, or who is actually running at a utilization rate of more than 80% or 90%. And you can break it down by, is it the tooling capacity, is it the equipment capacity, is it the shift capacity? So based on all these different kinds of areas that we are looking at from the assessment, you get these insights which allows you to, take adequate measures from the system. So one thing that we definitely provide is we talked about the assessment, but at the same time, what is important that ties back everything together is constantly monitoring what are the different types of events. We briefly touched on it, but if you just take an example, maybe we'll start with an example, which is the word fire. It has more than 26 variations in the English language. For example, it would be factory fire, it could be a plant fire, industrial fire, it could be industrial estate and a fire, a warehouse and a fire. And when this gets added up to other keywords like an explosion, the combinations are endless. And what we do is we monitor all these different combinations for just one event in 53 different languages that we mentioned. And the keyword repository that we have, it incorporates the cognitive learning that we've applied over decades of news keywords that we have gathered from the internet, from the experts, from the experience that we have, and so on. What the EventWatch AI does is auto combines all these different duplicate stories. So one of the big challenges people out there face is, there are duplicate stories. How do you, scan through millions of news items every second? How do you know which is important to my company? So that's what the EventWatch AI, what it does is actually auto combines all these different duplicate stories. And it looks into different news medias and then try to combine it into one single event using the technology, the natural language processing technology that we have. And what we do is we have an intelligence team that would contextually connect the story to the supply chains, the industry that you're in, and deliver intelligence to you based on the 40 different event types that we monitor every minute, every second. So the image that you see here actually covers almost all, I would say, all the different types of events that you can imagine. For example, from mergers to factory fires to capacity constraints to shortages to labor strikes, anything that you can name, that you can think about, you can see that these are event types that we monitor and we notify you. And the important thing here is we don't keep sending you multiple notifications. We only send you information multiple times if there is a materialistic change, which you would definitely want to know if there is an impact out there. So definitely reducing the noise, making it relevant to your organization, helping you understand the severity of the event, what kind of capacity issue is actually going on out there, helping you to develop the overall process of creating an EventWatch playbook to assessing to monitoring. That's what Resilinc as a whole package would help you to support in these cases. So we talked about the assessment, the way that you can easily launch, or you could bring in your assessment to Resilinc and we can launch that assessment for you. We talked about the support where we would make sure that the suppliers understand the goal, get the information back from these suppliers, educate them, which is the overall purpose of the whole risk management program as well. Then we looked at the metrics. So how do you get that insights? How do you understand prescriptively what is important based on the responses provided? But the last piece of it, of the whole puzzle, is of course the mitigation aspect of it. So that now these are the exactly set of suppliers which are risky, which has to be prioritized for mitigation. So how do you tackle that? So that's where this coordination of mitigation becomes really, really important, especially when you have a team of supplier management experts which are globally dispersed, that are traveling extensively. So having that centralized collaboration system where you can coordinate and ensure that everyone is in sync and is within the know-how of the mitigation processes and not duplicating the efforts is very important. And that's what, Resilinc's, the project tracker and the mitigation tracker helps you to deliver in terms of having that seamless mitigation experience. So what users can leverage is, understand what are the projects created, assign owners to the projects that you've created, track the statuses, assign the due dates. You can create playbooks for the different projects, for the capacity project. I think one of the good examples that you can see here on the first and second case is there's a capacity concern. There's an owner here, an owner who is responsible to mitigate the issue here. Then there would be different tasks that you can create, the due dates associated with each of these tasks. And at the end of the day, you're looking at the metric and how well are you moving forward. Are you able to close the gaps that you've identified? So all this information as an organization, you're able to manage in one place at one location. And as I said, you can hit the ground running rather than trying to slowly walk baby steps, which is the last thing that we all want. So efficiency, improving the efficiency through this virtual collaboration is very important, and that's what we deliver a whole package for the capacity assessments. We want to make sure that you are secured, your supply chain is secured. Any capacity issues that happen around the world, you're able to initiate a process and get it out from the issue stage to being a champion in your organization. So with that said, I think I'm getting closer towards the end of the session here. I wanted to bring a special offer here. So you're automatically eligible to receive a free trial of our world-class event watch monitoring service if you attend one of our webinars. So definitely encourage you to sign up for the free trial, and I can definitely say that you would be amazed and you would think, how did I run the program without having such a service, which would save a ton of your time over the course of each day that you work on. From the trial standpoint, you will be able to receive real-time email alerts about events happening in your industry. So all the different event types that we talked about, you get these notifications as soon as these happen. You can access the mobile app or the online solution as well, where you can load your specific sites that you're interested to monitor and manage the risk. And then all these alerts and news events are tailored to specific sites that you're interested to hear about. And more importantly, just try it out, and I'm sure that you will be able to be the leaders in the space that you're in. I think this is my last slide here. I think we started off by mentioning about the EventWatch 2018 annual report. So we released our report a few weeks back. It is a wonderful resource for you to understand what were the critical events of 2018, a lot of case studies and eye-opening information about how companies out there were affected, how industries were affected due to the event. So more importantly, you can use that data and insights to prepare for 2019 and the years ahead. So definitely would encourage you to download the report and let us know if you have any questions at www.resilinc.com. And very important, stay connected. So we are hosting our next conference at the Amgen headquarters in Thousand Oaks on June 11th. It will be a great event where we would have practitioners and experts in the space from J&J, Amgen, Becton Dickinson, Biogen, Micron, etc. So join us and be a part of the discussions as to know what supply chain best practices are out there and what companies do differently to stay ahead of the game and be the leaders in the space they're in. With that said, I think we'll go into the Q&A section. Gabby, back to you. Do we have any questions to address today?
Yes, we do. Thank you, Sandeep and Rana. So I do see a question here. Are you able to share partner information with additional customers now, assuming partner approves?
That is, as long as the partner approves. Gabby, thank you for that question. Yes, we are. So that is our LinkedIn model. So the partner provides the information once, and if you have multiple customers, that information can be trickled down to whichever customer that partner provides that part for, as long as they go in and approve that.
And Rana, I wanted to chime in here. One of the things that, again, as I mentioned, we have more than 85,000 suppliers that we have mapped. So what we also can do is help you in identifying or providing you insights on what are the different alternate suppliers, alternate materials based on the research that we have done. So that's definitely something as well which you could leverage, especially at moments when there are constraints and issues going on. This is something which would be a tool of advantage for you.
Great, thank you. So I don't see any other questions coming in. So once again, if you do have any follow-up questions, don't be afraid to follow up. You can reach out to Sandeep directly or chat with us on our site. We do have a live chat integrated there, and you can also email us directly as well. So with that, I'll give you more time on your calendar, everyone. Thank you for joining today's webinar. Have a great day.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.